Okay, we're going to work on the next part of 5.5 CAD model features and create the Automoblocks axle. So this is also going to be done with a revolve. It's a little bit more complicated though. We're working off of, this is our cutaway sketch of the axle. You can see there's lots of dimensions. Now many of these are diameters, and we're going to actually be creating half of it, so it's a radius, so we're going to have to adjust a lot of those. And so as it suggests in the directions here from the assignment, we're going to sketch only the half of the section above here in this sort of blue bit. So that's what we're going to sketch in our in this part. So we're going to start this sketch with a construction line that's going to be right along the center here. Just going to do a line, set it to construction over here on the side. And since this is a construction line, it doesn't have to be any particular size. The overall length needs to be probably a little bit longer than our shape, which is 0.88, so we'll make it about that big. I'm going to turn off the construction as we move forward here. And I'm going to start down here and work my way up and around. So my first dimension is this width right across here, this thickness. And the way that is given doesn't tell me a whole lot about that size. I can see that it's less than a little bit less than 0.07. There's probably essentially other measurements in there that we need to figure that out. So maybe I will go the other way, and I'll start where I have a lot of dimensions here in this space as we move along. So starting here on the top, I'm going to start up here and I'm going to draw a line over that is 0.07 inches. And then I'm going to go down. We don't have a specific amount on this yet. That's going to be set later on. So I'm just going to go down a little ways that looks similar. And then over a ways, down a little bit here, over, down, over. So these aren't specific dimensions at this point in time. And that's something that's a little bit complicated, but we'll work with that. We're basically creating this shape to start with, and then we will put in dimensions later on. So careful as you do this that you're not creating, as you can see there, extra constraints. We don't want those extra lines. We can see that there's a little bit of an angle here, so we're going to put that in. Be careful of those extra lines. That one's probably the toughest one to put in there, but something approximately like that. It's usually good to put in your biggest dimensions first. So let's start with the 0.88 dimension. And that's going to, as we do the dimension, we're going to do it from the corner to corner here. So corner, single dot, corner over here, and that overall is going to be 0.88. So we've got that. We notice that it changes some of our other dimensions, some of the look of the shape. So let's see if we can adjust that. We're going to come down here, put this 0.33 dimension in, see if that helps a little bit. Should be a 0.33. And that helped a little bit, but didn't get exactly what we were after there. So let's put in some additional dimensions here, the 0.25 from the side to this underneath line. So we'll use those bottom 0.25. That helps to do some of our adjusting. That's good. Then we have from this point to this point. It's going to be a 0.19. Now your dimensions obviously are probably different from mine as they go in, so it's going to look a little bit different. I noticed as I did that, this changed. It's no longer perpendicular like I wanted, so I'm going to put that constraint in. You have to pay attention to yours. Yours will adjust as well. I may hold off on that because that changed some other stuff too. So I want to keep that angle there. So I'm going to hold off on that a little bit. Now I can put this 0.05 in for this small tip over here that I have. So let's get that. Oops. I'm going to change that because that was not what I wanted. In the dimension command, this should be a 0.05. Okay. Now this little line right here is a 0.01. 0.01. Now some of these other dimensions we need to put in are going to be based on the diameters here. So lots of these dimensions are going to be divided by 2. I'm going to start with my tallest. So up at the very top here is a 0.40 diameter. So I'm going to go from the top line here down to my construction line. Come way over here to the side. And that one right now I made it awfully tall, taller than it needed to be. So let's start with some of the bottom ones because that's going to cause some problems with squishing my shape weird. So let's start with underneath here and move my way up there. So that's a 0.19 dimension here. So let's start this line. Using dimension. So that's going to be a 0.19 divided by 2 and brings that up. Then we're going to go up to the next line on this side, 0.25 to this line here. So that's a 0.25 divided by 2. And then the top of this down to our construction line is a 0.30 divided by 2. And let's get the other side here is still 0.19, so that's good. 0.25 to this little bit here. So 0.25 divided by 2. The top line here on the right side is a 0.29 divided by 2. And then we have the very top we can do in, will make more sense now, at 0.40 divided by 2. Alright, so that's starting to look good there. Make sure we had a few of our other dimensions that we're missing in here. One is this angled bit here, and it's got that 0.01 that we put in, 0.05, 0.25, looking good. So we're missing 0.30. That's the one we're missing. And that 0.30 is also going to happen up at this corner right here. So we're going to take this construction line up to the corner point here, and that's going to be a 0.30 divided by 2. We can see we get that little bit of an angle. That's good. Now this is the time that I'm going to put in my perpendicular constraint here. And that's not wanting it to happen. So we're going to check some of our other dimensions here. I'm going to take off this 0.9 for the moment and put it back in. Try that perpendicular again. Still not working. So I'll undo, put my 0.9 back in. So somewhere I know what we want to do. Let's take out this 0.1, delete that. Let's put that dimension on this little line instead. And then we'll put in our perpendicular constraint. Nope, didn't get it either. So what we're going to do is I'm going to delete this line here. That's where we have a perpendicular there. That's our problem. So we can see we have an additional constraint there. Delete that constraint. Try and put the perpendicular up at the top, because that's where it actually needs to be. Now it's straightened it out. Good. So that was a hidden constraint that we put in unintentionally. And now we're done with this sketch. We have all of our bits and pieces. One of the things you'll notice is that it's not all purple. The reason for that is it's not at a fixed point. So we'll add a coincident constraint for our bottom corner here to the center, and that helps a lot there in tightening this up. Now we've got all of our lines in there due to the way that it's set up. There's a few things that aren't specifically tied down, but for our purposes that's going to work out okay. Go ahead and we're going to finish sketch on that. Revolve. It's already selected our profile, so all we need is an axis. In this case it is that construction line again. We want a full rotation, and that gives us the shape that we're looking for there. Now we're almost done. We have a little bit of left. Remembering back from the beginning, there is this slot that we need to put in of 0.20 distance and 0.04 cut. So we're going to find the side, which is this side here with a little bit of a flange sticking up. We're going to face that side, and we're going to start a 2D sketch on that very end point right here. Now it's kind of tough to see at the angle, so we're going to kind of turn it a little bit here. What we want is we're going to draw a sketch on here. So I'm going to use project geometry to get the circle that makes up the end of that. That project geometry makes sure that we know where we're working from, so that's good. Now we can create a rectangle that goes across the middle here, so we can cut both sides. And since we're only going to cut part of the way, we don't really matter. It doesn't matter how big it is in terms of how tall, because it can cut into the air as well as it can cut into the shape. But what we do need to do is we need to have a few constraints on here. So we're going to use the vertical constraint, and we're going to go the center point of our rectangle. We'll find it with a green dot, and the center point here of the drawing of our circle. That will line those up so that when we dimension this top to be that width that it wants, the 0.04, it keeps it around that shape. Now I made it a little bit smaller than we want because we need to get up over the circle here. That's fine, we can dimension that out. 0.78, we're just going to estimate here about a 0.25. That stretches down below, that's good. Not high enough though. So we're going to do a horizontal constraint from that center point to the center point of our rectangle. And that gets it back up, but it's not reaching all the way. So escape to get out. We're going to double click this 0.25 measurement. Let's change that to a 0.35. And that extends past, and that's good. That's what we need. So we've got our dimensions on there. We've got our rectangle. We're going to do an extrusion, and we're going to use that, but instead of doing the join here, we're going to do a cut it back in. The depth of that cut is 0.20. And we'll just kind of take a look at that from the side, and that looks like what we want. So we're going to click OK, and we have our completed axle. So we're going to save this. Go to File, Save As. It's going to be in your CAD Model Features folder, and this is axle. Alright, this finishes the second part of this assignment.